was a beautiful day, I remember, in September, one of the nicest days of the year.
Of course, it was a beautiful sunny morning.
It was a clear, sunny day, like really, really clear.
The air traffic controllers call that type of weather severe clarity.
And was in a great mood, beautiful weather, went to the gym, got exercise, voted, all before 9 o'clock.
September 11th was a regular Tuesday morning.
I got to work a little bit later than usual.
I got up very early to go to the dentist.
I was on my way to school.
And it was the end of third period. At a Andy Warhol Foundation.
I was sleeping, but my brother was watching TV.
So I was driving to work. I was on the subway.
I was sitting in the cockpit of a 737.
I was in class with 10th graders teaching world cultures.
And I was listening to a talk show in the car.
I was at the top of a mountain, just me and my friend working on this house.
At home in Fishers, doing some work.
I got to work at 8:30 in the morning.
I was in surgery, working on a dog's knee.
I was running one class, teaching some new advisors.
At school, at home, about to leave for class.
I was home, and I was just getting ready to walk out the door to go to work.
I was actually driving and listening to the Howard Stern radio show.
And really was having a great day, and it seemed so perfect.
We were sitting around the table, like a bed and breakfast table, and the CNN was on.
All of a sudden we heard a loud boom.
And I was coming out of the subway when I heard this explosion.
It just came out of nowhere at 600 miles an hour. It hit that building, and it was just a huge explosion.
I had a call from my close friend, said, go turn your TV on.
And all of a sudden I received a telephone call from my wife from her work.
Just having a normal day at work when the phone rang and it was my fiance that called me.
And then I got this call from my friend who was in tears.
My next door neighbor called me.
I had the call from my cousin.
I got a phone call from my mother, and she had told me if I saw the news.
I picked up the telephone. My older daughter was on the other line.
From El Gardacha in Egypt, where she lives with her husband.
He was in quite a state. He was quite frantic, and he was knocking on the door.
He said, James, turn on your TV. Turn on your TV. I'm like, why? He said, just turn it on, quick.
My mom was in a little bit of a state, and she called me upstairs.
And said, did you hear what happened to the World Trade Center? And I said, what are you talking about?
A coworker came in and said, have you heard about the towers in New York? Something hit a tower in New York. I said, no.
An airplane hit the World Trade Center, and the video, the television was on.
So I ran and quick turned my TV on, and there was the first building burning.
And then there were millions of pieces of material and airplane parts and window and glass, everything just flying.
I just had no idea what he was talking about.
And she said that the World Trade Towers had been, there was a terrorist attack.
Actually, she didn't know whether it was an attack or not. She just told me there was an accident. The plane flew into one of the World Trade.
And I was just like, really? Are you joking? I mean, that's not a good joke, you know?
I thought it was like a joke. I didn't think it really happened.
The news people didn't know what was happening, or at least they didn't want to say. I think after Oklahoma, they didn't want to say right away it's terrorism, so they were thinking of, plane went into the first tower.
And I asked her, what kind of a plane? Is it a small plane, a big plane? She said, I don't know.
And when I saw the video, I knew it was at least a 737.
And someone gave me a call from the next cube.
He said, it's on the news right now. I thought, well, I want to see what's going on.
And I ran immediately to the TV room and I switched on the TV.
I went next door where a group of people had gathered around a television set. And
during the break, we went upstairs and somebody had hooked up a television.
So we turned on the television, and it was like we walked into a horror movie.
At first, my initial reaction was that the media is overreacting.
We thought it was, accidental. I think everybody thought it was accidental at first.
And at first I thought it was an accident, like a lot of people.
At first I thought it was just a really tragic accident and coincidence.
Pilot was off course, or something's wrong with the instruments.
So probably just like some guy in a prop, like a single-engine prop that ran in. There were no pictures, there was no details of what had happened.
I was kind of surprised at first. I didn't know if it was for real or not.
The first thought which crossed my mind was, okay, it looks bad, but I'm sure it's something they can fix.
And at that point, I was kind of shocked, but almost didn't believe it.
The first thought that came to my head was, why are they showing footage from whenever it was when the trade towers were bombed the first time?
And I thought, oh, now what are they selling with all this violence and stuff?
I looked at the TV screen and I saw what was going on. At first I didn't believe it.
My first reaction was just complete disbelief. My students were completely silent.
I guess I was going through a period of disbelief.
We had no idea who was behind it in any way.
I didn't know what to do. I just sat down and started watching the news.
While I watched it, another plane hit the towers, and even the announcer didn't see it. He just said, oh, there's another explosion. But I said, no, another plane flew behind that building in the picture and hit that tower.
And we waited until we heard the second bang. And at that point, I said, I'm not staying here, let's just run. And we ran.
We saw an airplane fly across the screen and hit the second tower. And the man who owned the dental lab and I just looked at each other in disbelief.
And then a half hour later, she comes in again and opens the door and says, did you hear another plane went through the other World Trade Center?
And I was like, what? What is going on? Is this like real?
We had just gotten to the bistro when the second plane hit.
And then I saw on TV when the second plane hit the second tower.
So at that moment, it was kind of scary because we weren't really sure what happened. We weren't sure if it was an accident.
And that's kind of when there was a little bit of mass hysteria.
It was just chaos. It was just trying to maintain everybody. At that point, we started panicking. The assistant principal came in and told us to close the shades.
There was a rush of people running onto the train, crying and screaming and all hysterical.
And then I saw Elliot running and some tension.
Stream of people just going uptown, and a lot of them covered with gray ash.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of people sort of walking with stunned looks in their faces.
And we walked until we got to the 59th Street Bridge. We walked over the bridge and then down Northern Boulevard. Where we got off the bridge, people were giving us water.
People started buying like tons of things like water.
You could hear the commentators really, nervous about, what was happening.
The lady had this expression on her face behind the desk there that was like she'd seen a ghost.
5 or 6 minutes, I saw maybe 7, 8 people jump out these windows out of desperation because the fire was so hot and the smoke was so black.
And with every new person, another bit of bad news was coming in. That both towers are inflamed. People are jumping out of the towers.
A plane flew into the World Trade Center. Then it was a second plane that had flown into the other building of the World Trade Center. Then it was a plane flew into the Pentagon. I had heard a plane flew into the White House.
It's going to hit Pentagon, and another one is going towards Pittsburgh. And some reporter on television said the plane is going also to California, to San Francisco.
There were all these reports, though, there were 9 planes still missing in the sky.
I had heard that there was some 4 planes unaccounted for.
So it was really obvious this was a major attack, and nobody knew how extensive it was.
This was really bad. Something wasn't quite right here, and that we were probably under attack by somebody.
And that's when it kind of dawned on me that this was not an accident.
It couldn't possibly have been an accident. It had to be something deliberate. It was just the probability was just unbelievable.
We still really didn't know what was going on. We knew not to let anybody into the cockpit. We left the cockpit door locked.
From then on, we were all glued to the television and radio.
At that point, we all kind of focused on the TV and just sat there and watched.
Hardly got any work done because we're all just listening.
Everyone's focus was lost in what had happened, and if they knew someone that maybe had been there.
The whole lab just came to a standstill as we listened. I mean, Every station we turned to, it just seemed like turmoil.
There was a line a block long of parents coming to pick up their kids, and they were hysterical.
And we went to, I think, 4 or 5 clinics, and they were all full, they were all not accepting any more blood. There was so many people just standing in line waiting for 5 hours to give their blood.
After about 90 minutes, we all got cleared off the base, all civilian employees.
When I got to work, everyone was kind of in shock and didn't know what exactly to do at the time.
The whole office was kind of in disbelief.
Everybody was crying. The dentist was crying.
The whole classroom, everyone was, crying and screaming.
In a state of shock. It was almost as if things weren't happening.
It was kind of hard to take in. It just seemed, for lack of a better term, like a movie.
We were told to go back into the classroom and try to keep school as calm and normal as possible.
And the teacher was just talking about donating money to the poor people there.
And a lot of people, were trying to make calls to their families and things like that. And it's really hard to get phone lines.
So I was just panicking. I called out my mom. The phones were busy.
We started calling, all lines were busy. I tried to call right away and I couldn't get through.
Everything was busy. I couldn't make a call on my regular phone. I couldn't make a call on my cell phone. I couldn't get through anything.
Tried to get in touch with my wife. Couldn't, of course, because all the phones were down.
Called my relatives to find out if they were okay.
I called my mother right away.
I called my girlfriend, I called my family, I made sure everybody was okay. A lot of people were stranded in Manhattan.
I spent a lot of time on the phone trying to make contact with my sister.
People were calling on their cell phones. People had sons, daughters.
As soon as my class was over, I called my friend's mother to find out, if he was okay.
I then called my parents in Cleveland to make sure they were safe. I called my sister at her job.
And I called Peace Corps Washington, asking them what was the condition of the Peace Corps in New York.
It was very unsettling at that point to not know what was going on and to be kind of sitting around just waiting for things to unfold and waiting for news of people.
I was very unhappy most of that day, worrying about people who were dead or dying.
Running to the art room, seeing horrible, horrible pictures.
This plane-shaped hole in the side of the tower smoking.
Both towers were on fire.
People were in mass, people all filled with smoke.
The building was burning so badly. It was you could see the metal burning.
And shortly after that, we got a message saying that United Airlines had decided to ground all of its airplanes.
We didn't tell the children till later that day. We sort of told them. We sort of let them be sent home so the parents could deal with it more.
They didn't know what was happening. The kids have parents who work in downtown, and we couldn't tell the kids. We couldn't let our emotions show.
The entire school was in and out of the library trying to see as many different news reports.
During school, our teachers were, I guess, told not to really react to it and not to play radios or anything, just have a normal school day.
The children started asking questions. They're like, well, how come this one left early and this one left early? And we just said, well, it wasn't like a regular school day. Some kids are going to leave early today.
During a break, during school, of course, I worry about my children. My son lived in New York City.
So I just walked into Penguin Books. I didn't even know who they were, and I asked the receptionist to let me use her phone, and she did. And I called my mom, and they were eulogizing me already because they thought I was dead.
We stood there and watched both towers crumble, and that right then and there it hit me. Okay, this is serious.
There were, bodies flying all over, just things falling apart. I mean, it's towers falling.
I said, that's not happening. I mean, this building cannot go down. And sure it was. It just collapsed. It just went straight down. And so by that point, I started to cry.
There's 50,000 people in those two towers. How could we possibly have those many funerals? I didn't even in a minute think that anyone could get out.
There's just like a wave around the room, and we just all put our stuff down
and we just sat down and stared with our mouths open.
I just kind of sat down. I just glued the TV for hours after that.
And so a lot of people that I work with were very alarmed, almost in a state of panic.
It hit me very hard, as even though I was probably 800 miles away from this event.
I was shocked. I mean, it was just, you know, trying to find out everything I could.
I was just afraid to go out because one's whole sense of reality was shaken.
We had a lot of people in the office just crying at their desks, other people just talking because they needed to talk.
Everybody that was in the store stopped.
I couldn't believe what was going on, and I was really scared.
And I just couldn't believe it that something like this could happen in America, in New York.
I was in shock. I just couldn't even speak.
A lot of us started crying, and we just really didn't know, you know, how to feel, what to feel.
I couldn't imagine who would do this. I couldn't imagine how anybody could hate us enough to do something like this, I guess.
Shocked that it didn't happen in Chicago and Houston and LA and other places I expected it to be.
It was just very shocking to have such a thing happen here in the United States.
Not everyone gets along in the world, and you know, there's bound to be something like this.
But to go this far, it's beyond my realm of comprehension. It wasn't until I saw it on the television that it actually hit me, the reality of what had happened.
And try to picture it in your mind, and then so you actually get to see everything that was happening with the news coverage, which I didn't get to see that night till about 5 o'clock, and it was just unbelievable.
It was just a lot to absorb.
We had 1,900 employees in the building, and 11 people were missing.
One of my brother's best friends worked in the World Trade Center. I think it was the first tower on the 106th floor, and he did not make it out.
I have a nephew who has a cleaning business, and one of his workmen was in the building.
He was caught in black smoke. He didn't know what was going on. And it was like in a movie, he said out of nowhere, somebody grabbed him.
My son-in-law's good friends, he had been killed. He was on the 105th floor. He had called his wife and said, "I'm okay, I'm making my way down." And of course he never did.
My supervisor, she lost her brother, who had a family and kids, and another one lost his sister.
Thankfully, everyone got out. Everyone that had been there made it out alive.
I went out in the yard and found, we live about 6 miles from World Trade, and found actual securities documents that had apparently come from there. They were a little charred.
And then the next day, I guess the anger starts, like, why did they do this? It's hard to believe it, actually.
After several days of feeling the sadness, I believe it then turned into kind of an anger and almost revenge, which is unusual for me.
At that point, I don't think I had any blame because I wasn't sure who to blame for it.
How could people do this, and how could people not see that this was coming?
Who would do that? You know, was it somebody who was deranged? Was it a group of people who were deranged? I really didn't think of any terrorist act or anything like that.
I really didn't even think of who might have done that. It just seemed unbelievable.
I remember the news that there was suspicion that it had been terrorists from the Middle East, and wondering how they could have decided that so soon.
You know, I immediately thought it's the September 11 organization. This is the organization that has killed Israeli athletes in Munich.
Iraq and Saddam Hussein was my first guess that this was something that he had hired out these people to get back at President Bush for what his father had done.
I blame a lot of it on our government.
We're kind of the global bullies, and if you push someone hard enough, they're gonna get up and push you back.
I was a little bit surprised how much our teachers were willing to come out and say that we had to take some responsibility too.
If, people had just known or the government had known, maybe a lot of this stuff wouldn't have happened.
Hindsight is 20/20, so I guess something like that you can never really expect, no matter how much intelligence you have or information you have.
I don't think that we were even speculating about who might have done it.
At that point in time, it's fuzzy for me.
It wasn't necessarily blame, just not being able to fathom that it was happening.
I think at the beginning I blamed myself because I always have a tendency to blame myself.
A lot of people that knew people directly that were there felt more anger. I just felt a deep sadness, just like a pit in my chest.
I couldn't believe it. Terrorists had that big of a success.
I just couldn't imagine who would want to kill so many people all at once. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Some kind of anger, but it was still just a shock, disbelief, rage, but I can't say directed.
Like it said, I wouldn't blame Muslims for it. It's just a certain group of people and how they're brought up, and I'm sure they have their reasons, but I don't think any of it's really justified.
They have their reasons, whether they're good or bad.
As we all know, there are no democracies there. There's no way of expressing it. And they thought, well, America is an easy target.
But I don't understand how someone, could hold that much anger towards an entire country, for 4 or 5 people's mistakes.
What are these people thinking? It's not their religion so much as a bastardized form of a religion that's causing them to do what they're doing.
The religion of Islam and its extreme nature at some points are what caused it.
And how do we deal with people that think that they have permission from God, basically, to do harm to people that they don't like?
It's going to be etched in our memories forever, and hopefully we can take precautions with our national security to prevent these, travesties from happening.
I don't know if the world's going to like it, but we're going to become more international. We're going to see the world in a different way.
It's just very upsetting to think of man's inhumanity to man.
Well, I just felt very sorry that so many people got hurt because of that.
And I hope that the things that happened that day will change all of us, so that we won't harbor bitterness, we won't harbor anger.
Sometimes I guess it takes an event like this for us to unite and, be together and show our support and love for one another, although we're all different.
Indian people of other races, anybody being blamed for the actions of these few people made me think that I could also be blamed.
We need to rethink our place in the world and our responsibility. We've been given so much. We have so much. What do we do with that?
What I remember about the day is just how perfect the day started, and how quickly the day turned out to be one of the worst days I remember.